Hello, good evening. So we want to thank you on behalf of Education USA, thank them for hosting us, and thank you for coming to, I know it's one of the final presentations of the night. There are a few webinars you could join in. My name is Carrie. I am an international admissions counselor at Binghamton University. And so we are going to give a presentation on the benefits of undergraduate research, kind of using Binghamton as an example. I'll give a quick overview of Binghamton, and my colleague Joe Cheesy is in our booth. So if you have more questions or want to have a more in-depth conversation about Binghamton, you can always stop over there. But Binghamton, we are a medium-sized Tier 1 research institute. And so medium-sized, we have about 14,000 undergraduate students. We are about 3 to 4 hours away from Buffalo, New York, or from Niagara Falls, the Toronto area. So not too far away from some really key locations in Canada. But the key point is that we are a Tier 1 research institute. And so Carnegie has some levels, and they talk about, the types of research that you can do. And there's a big focus in the US in general on undergraduate research that can sometimes vary from other countries and their systems of maybe only doing research at the graduate level. And so I'm joined with my colleague Rachel here, and I'll have Rachel introduce herself, and then she's going to give the bulk of this presentation to talk about the benefits of undergraduate research, but also to give some really key examples of how to do research and what that looks like practically, not just in STEM, but she's got a lot of really great examples across the board. So Rachel, I will hand it over to you. And in the meanwhile, if you want to share where you're coming from, if you have any questions, what grade you're in, what your major is in, we would love to have you throw it in the chat, and I will stay connected there. So if you have any questions, I will be answering on the side.
Thanks so much, Carrie. My name's Rachel Coker. I'm the Director of Research Advancement at Binghamton. And as Carrie mentioned, I'm going to talk to you tonight about the benefits of undergraduate research, more from the faculty perspective, what you might get out of it. So here we go. I want to start just by giving you some very basic information. What is a research university? You might hear that term tossed around, and it's sometimes not clear. Well, isn't there research really going on everywhere? But research universities like Binghamton are really different in some key ways from some small colleges. You're going to, at a research university, you're going to find graduate students, people pursuing a master's degree or a PhD in a variety of disciplines. You're going to find faculty who are engaged in the creation of knowledge. They are not just people who are experts in their field and able to teach about it. They are themselves pushing the boundaries of what's known in their field. And in the absolute best case scenario, all of this really, all these different pieces feed each other and support each other. So what you can have as an undergrad is an opportunity to be engaged in that creation of knowledge with faculty, mentored by graduate students, and all of you together pushing forward. So as you are learning something, your faculty member is breaking new ground in some area. The graduate students are working on their theses and dissertations, and all of this can support each other. So some great mentorship, some great learning opportunities along the way there, and just a richness of experience that's really different from just a classroom-based learning environment. And as Carrie mentioned, the Carnegie classifications come out every few years. Binghamton right now is one of 146 American institutions that are on that list of very high research intensity. And what that means is that we're conducting research across a variety of disciplines. At Binghamton, we have people working in many fields of engineering, many hard sciences, the social sciences, humanities, health sciences as well. And so if you change your mind, maybe you come to Binghamton thinking that you want to study biology, and along the way you fall in love with anthropology, there's opportunities to move between departments, which can be harder to do at a smaller institution. Let's talk for just a second about what is undergraduate research, right? How is this different from just doing your homework in class? At Binghamton, we define undergraduate research as a mentor-supported inquiry. So you're working with somebody's help. You're not just out there by yourself doing a lot of reading. You're working with a mentor, someone who's guiding you. You're participating in a creative activity or a scholarly investigation, and you are making the original intellectual, intellectual or creative contribution to the discipline. Original could mean a meaningful contribution by the student. It could be absolutely new. It could be something that really is helping to um, provoke new questions. Sometimes what we find is that we have negative findings, right? You do some kind of an experiment and you find something that doesn't work. And although it's not as glamorous as finding something that does work, it's also very important for the advancement of science to experience that as well. And so that's a big piece of it too. It's sometimes not clear, well, why would I want to do this? I could just be taking classes. I could be sitting here with my flashcards. I could be learning things and getting ready for my first job. Why would I want to take on this extra work? Or why would I want to do research and be engaged in things that might not turn out versus doing coursework and having somebody lead me through this material in a way that's kind of guaranteed success? Well, yeah, I would say as an undergraduate researcher, you're going to develop a lot of skills that are useful. Not only useful to you as a student and as a scholar, but useful to you in whatever job you pursue after you graduate. You develop communication skills. Your leadership ability will be strengthened by this kind of experience. As I mentioned, you're often going to be working alongside graduate students and alongside a faculty mentor. So teamwork is a big part of that. Critical thinking is a vital piece of this as well. If you're driving the investigation, you're going to be the one having to make some decisions along the way, right? Which path is more interesting? Which way should I go here? If I have two things that are very interesting to me, which one should I pick? And so that critical thinking piece is vital to it also. And of course, the technical skills and the research methods that you take are things that you can apply to a variety of topics. Once you learn how to run a certain kind of experiment, for example, you can do that, with other aims in mind, and with other labs and with other investigators in the future. I'm going to give two examples of programs that we have at Binghamton for first-year students. And Carrie mentioned that in the US, there is a real emphasis right now on undergraduate research, but Binghamton is doing something a little bit different. I would say we've invested in first-year programs that are very, they're resource intensive. They're going to put you in a cohort of students who all have a passion for a certain project and certain kind of topic, and give you some real unusual level of mentoring for someone just starting their undergraduate education. So for students in STEM, we have what's called the First Year Research Immersion Program. And this is an opportunity to continue the academic studies that you've been participating in high school and jump right into real research. So that program is 3 semesters. You start first semester freshman year with a research methods seminar. And by the end of your first semester sophomore year, you will have presented research, your own findings, and had an opportunity to follow through on an ongoing basis on a question that interests you personally. We more recently have also developed something called the Source Project, which is a kind of parallel project for students in the humanities. This is an opportunity for students to work with original sources, perhaps in history, art history, many different disciplines. And students work with faculty mentors and they get to learn about the sort of practices that make the profession work. So in the humanities, I'll be honest, this is different. This is a difficult thing and it can be new even for the faculty themselves. Where in a lab you have that structure in place of here's the faculty person who's won the grant, they're the expert. There's a tier of PhD students and master's students under them, and then the undergrads can be mentored by all those people above. In humanities, very often it has been a more solitary pursuit. So this is pretty exciting to be able to conduct that kind of research that might have just been, one person alone in the library with a stack of books, and turn it into something that's more collegial and where you get that sort of one-on-one attention and feedback about your writing, feedback about your research approach. That's really different. So what does this really look like exactly? Picture yourself. So I want you to picture yourself standing in this ballroom that we've converted for a day into a poster session. We provide an opportunity every spring for students from across campus to participate in research days. We have a campus-wide poster session. There are typically about 400 or 500 undergraduates who join us for it. Many of them are presenting in small groups. Others might be presenting solo. And they stand up with a poster that represents a project that they've seen through to completion. They've developed a hypothesis, they've tested it, and they're ready to present their research results. And this, for some people, this might be it, right? It's spring of your senior year, you present this research and you enter the job market. But for some people, they get here maybe as sophomores. And the next step is that they take that poster and get to go to the national conference in their discipline with it. Or they keep working with their faculty advisor and develop a journal publication with them as one of the authors. So this is really like exciting real world stuff that you can be doing as soon really as your sophomore year of college. I'm going to give you some quick examples, some success stories that we've seen recently at Binghamton, just by way of showing you that really undergraduate research can be such a challenging and rewarding experience for you, regardless of what major you're considering. So Lisa Foreman, for example, has interests in both Russian studies and in computer science. And she really, she participated in the SOURCE project. She was looking for a way to link together all these different things that interested her. And she eventually connected with a political science professor at Binghamton. And the two of them have come up with a project that's allowing her to analyze tweets about the war in Ukraine. And she's coding the language that's used in these tweets and kind of discerning how positive and how negative people's opinions about the conflict are. And she's able to produce data and results that could be interesting to people in international relations, certainly in the military. And so it's an interesting way to see, even as an undergrad, how you could be connecting what you're learning to the very real world outside. Alejandro Wiltshire is a perhaps more traditional example of a first-year student who got involved right away at Binghamton, joined a lab. He works in a biomedical engineering team, and this lab has kind of two focuses. One piece of what they're doing is trying to understand how wrinkles are formed. So this is a million, or you could say maybe $1 billion question, right? If we could figure out what causes your skin to wrinkle, maybe we could figure out how to not have it wrinkle. People pay big money for that. So that's one piece of what they're studying. They're also looking at ways to reduce the risk of surgical site infections. So very often if people have surgery during their recovery, there can be complications. And Alejandro is part of a team that's looking at ways to have better outcomes for people after surgery. He's so passionate about this and has put such time in the lab. He's even working now with with samples from human cadavers, and has earned the trust of his faculty mentor and has the research know-how, the skills and the techniques down to where he can be trusted to do that kind of analysis. So really advanced work, and he's still an undergraduate. And I think it's really important to say that there are these kinds of experiences in the humanities as well, in completely creative pursuits. So last spring, Julian Cubiero presented a piece that he had composed for one of the jazz ensembles at Binghamton. He wrote an original piece. He had to come up with the orchestration for 15 different instruments in the ensemble, and did that as part of his studies in business and music. So a real opportunity to take what he had learned throughout his time at Binghamton and see it all come together on stage. So just a really special student and a pretty impressive experience. And now Carrie and I are happy to answer questions you may have about undergraduate research, about Binghamton, about ways to get involved.
Rachel, I wanted to start with a question, and we haven't kind of talked about it, and maybe it varies from campus to campus, but for Binghamton as an example, how many students would you say typically participate in some sort of undergraduate research or one of these endeavors while they are an undergraduate student?
So the first year programs that I mentioned are growing every year, but we focus more on talking to students who are graduating from Binghamton. So senior year, we ask people reflect back on your time at Binghamton and tell us about those experiences. And one of the questions we ask is, did you conduct original research with a faculty advisor? And about a third of our students say that they have done that before they finish at Binghamton.
And then that's just on top of students who may be doing research in the labs or as part of coursework and that sort of thing. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And I know that again, maybe some schools may be different, but I think in the U.S. it tends to be the case. So, are these students typically paid interns, unpaid research? Is it for credit? What do you typically see when undergraduate students are pursuing this, and how does this fit into their schedule in terms of earning credit or something like that?
So there's quite a variety. There are definitely paid positions in our labs. One of the scientists who I always enjoy going to visit is named Anthony Fiumera. He does large scale, and I mean large scale population studies involving fruit flies. And the research methods that are required to succeed in his lab, it turns out a lot of them are very basic. So after you've spent about an hour with Anthony, he is ready to help. Like, you can go ahead and take a bunch of test tubes, look at the flies, and start labeling. And so he does employ like a kind of an army of undergraduates to make these experiments possible. He wants to observe thousands and thousands and thousands of pairs of fruit flies mating. And so the way to do that is just, raw human labor. And so there are students working for Anthony more like maybe not round the clock, but a lot of the day, every day, including on weekends. So it could be something that's a side job for people. There are definitely opportunities to intern with faculty for credit. There are also course-based research experiences, and those are growing at Binghamton as well. So you do find, for example, in our health and wellness department, we have a very active set of faculty mentors who pursue projects every spring with groups of students focused on public health. So I've seen some really interesting research related to how can we help people quit smoking, for example, or what are the effects of study drugs on undergraduates. So people are able to take a question or a social problem or social issue that they find fascinating and go after it in a way with that kind of faculty support buttressing them.
Great. So Zhao Ying has a question. Is this kind of research work considered work study? So international students are only allowed to work up to 20 hours per week on campus. I actually can help answer this a little bit because I work with international students, and yes, so international students are only allowed to work 20 hours on campus as part of their I-20 visa and the F1 student visa that they are on. So there's federal work study, and perhaps some of those fall into that category, which is for US students or students who have US passports. But any student who is on an F1 visa or an I-20 visa, I have a current intern right now, and she is working for me 10 hours per week. She's also working in the pharmacy school and doing 3 hours for just a set period of time in the semester. So maybe not even the full semester, but just when they may need her. And those will all count towards those 20 hours. So maybe Rachel, I'm sure, do you have other kind of international students that you've seen who will do some work or even some of that little work on campus? And I know any paid position will kind of count towards that 20 hours.
Right. So I would also say that faculty are very flexible. They may only have a certain budget for paid staff, but if they have students who are interested in work beyond that, or who can't pursue a paid position for some reason, including their visa status, it should be possible to arrange ways to be in the lab and do other work for credit in that scenario. Yeah.
And many students will do an internship for credit and also an internship with payment at the same time. And that credit is still, then counting towards the full credit for the students in the university. So I like to share too the story of just in the US education in general, flexibility and opportunity are, I think, two words that really help sum up the US education system. Flexibility in that faculty really want to work with you, whether it's at Binghamton or a small private school or wherever the case is. They really want to be able to help you get where you want to go. And the other thing is opportunity. So, students, a full-time student is expected to take 12 credits per semester to maintain a full-time student status on an F1 visa. Binghamton students typically take 16 to even 20 credits per semester. And so some of those credits may be for an internship or for a lab opportunity or a research opportunity. And so it's not all going to be sitting in a classroom, but students really maximize their time on a US campus because there's so much going on every single day. And to put it in perspective, I know I asked Rachel how many students, but somewhere like Binghamton, we are only considered a medium-sized school. There are many larger schools than Binghamton, but a third of 14,000 students is still about 5,000 students who are doing research in a one-on-one kind of meaningful way. And Rachel, I also kind of wanted to shift it and kind of focus and ask, how does this really help propel a student in their career, and why would they choose this avenue to maybe broaden their career as opposed to just kind of the rote, take more classes and get more credits and get a higher GPA?
Yeah, so let me come back to this slide and just say, for example, that there's in the engineering departments in particular, there's the senior design project. And one of the things that we talk about with the students who are doing the senior design projects is that really whatever kind of job they're going to go into, communication is a big piece of that. And so they're going to need to be able to articulate clearly, here's why I think we should pursue the project in this way. And they need to be able to get the buy-in of their supervisor, and so that can be, in this scenario, that can be your teacher, your professor. But those experiences are things that right away pay off for you, understanding how to work in that team and how to communicate your ideas effectively, get other people on board with your proposal, and be able to put that kind of thinking to work. It's also really important in the US. Some of these kinds of teams are the first way that students get experience working across cultures, sometimes working across language. And so you also see at Binghamton that you'll have a lot of diverse teams working together on projects like that. And so it's an opportunity for you to understand yourself and what you bring to the table as someone going into the workforce, and also what you enjoy, right? Like, what pieces of this are most interesting to me? I want a job that has a lot of this and maybe less of that, right? Maybe you love being the person who's presenting back to the funding group. And maybe you're going to want to be the person who stands up at the whiteboard, in the meeting and shows the work and advocates for a certain path forward. Or maybe you want to be in the lab. Don't bother me about the presentation. Here's the numbers. You make the sale. These are opportunities for you to find out how you fit in, which things you like. And that's all for the good when you go start looking for jobs and understanding yourself and where you want to make that kind of contribution. Also, what kind of further education you may want to have to best enable you to make those kinds of discoveries and to continue innovating. So a lot of students at Binghamton do stick around for a master's degree. Others end up going on for a doctorate. And it's wonderful to see that people have found the thing that they want to pursue, and really dive into, for advanced study.
I'd like to add too that it's something about the university environment in the US where it's a safe place to fail and learn and pick up from those mistakes, and you have that faculty mentor or your investigator. So you're not all on your own trying to do these things, but there's opportunity for growth and for learning those mistakes, so that when students graduate, they're very, very competitive in the job market, because you've got so much experience on your resume. And a lot of times, especially in the US, there are many students who can have the same degree, but it does come down to some of those soft skills and those things that you're learning outside of the classroom that really tend to set students apart. And so undergraduate research is a really, really big way that that can happen in many, many different capacities. I know we have about 5 minutes left here. I wanted to see if we have any other questions from the audience, or Rachel, anything else that we wanted to kind of add before we wrap up?
I think that's covered a bit of just a taste of what you could want to know about undergraduate research in the States. I think on our final slide there, you'll see the email address, so that if you do want to get in touch with someone in Binghamton's admissions office, the place to do that is international@binghamton.edu.
I would also encourage students, at this point in your journey, ask the questions of, you're going to maybe go back to these booths, or you've been in the booths this afternoon, but I know that Education USA is going to have in-person events in May in Canada, and there's always things going on. But talk to university representatives and ask if you can talk to current students too. I know some of our current students, they love to share about their research and go on and on about what they're doing, and it helps you really understand the passion that students have and why it matters so much to them. And so there's a great value in getting that student perspective, and so many students throughout the US are going to be happy to share that experience with you. And there's always international students who may be doing those same things as well. So whether you are an international student, or maybe you have a US passport but you're still in Canada and want to know what that would look like, there are a lot of resources out there. And my favorite thing to tell students is to reach out and communicate with college and university representatives early and often in your journey, so that you can be well informed. It is a full year process. So right now we are in January. Maybe you are looking for the fall of 2024. Maybe you're still thinking about the fall of 2023. So there's plenty of time, but really, make use of the resources and the people that are here for you. We love to chat with our students, and we're so happy to do it. And with that, I think we're going to come to a close. Zhao Ying, is there anything else that we may need to add before we wrap up? All good. Okay. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining and for giving this presentation and your perspective. And I know you work directly with the students, and so that's always really, really helpful. So I appreciate you coming on, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Sounds great. Take care.